Alright, I'm told we will get started, and I have no mics, so you yell. They're up here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can I go quieter? Alright. No, you guys are gonna do that part. So, I'm Laura Ferris. I'm past the member of this thing. Currently the school and just me, past president. I have been for this. My other job is I work for CloudMed. We help out systems get paid for the Thursday and Friday. Used to be triage, we work with CloudMed, so it's 21 years old. But super excited to be here. I'm very, very stoked about this group. We have representatives from Medicare, Prioritization, revenue cycle, lots of experience. The idea is to just provide perspective on their day-to-day and what it's like to be involved with their ends. And also create something with the dialogue of the group as well. I'll let the panel introduce themselves. We have Patty Whitmarsh, Lindsay St. George, and Mr. Klepper, and I'll let them one at a time talk to us a little bit about their history, where they are now. And then I would just love to get a sense of, for yourself personally, any significant changes you've had to deal with because of COVID yourself.
You said lots of experience being old. I'm Patty Whitmarsh. I am the Director of Care Strategy and Managed Care for AU Medical Center in Augusta, aka MCU. I have spent just a few years in managed care and have a department, obviously, at the hospital. Prior to that, I've only been here about 2 years. Prior to that, I was 15 years a healthcare consultant and served about 30 hospitals for managed care services in Georgia. So I'm familiar with not just the hospital where I am, but the perils of rural healthcare, because we deal mostly with small rural hospitals and their affiliated entities. Started off my career in long-term care and spent some years with a solo physician practice and an MSO, created an IPA. So I've had a lot of experience on the hospital and physician side.
So change your life. Have you had to deal with
Change. Well, when our departments and our entities decided that, well, as many as could go home and work, my team decided that we could easily work from home. We weren't in an area where we are measuring on productivity like rep cycle is. And so we vacated office space to allow those who needed to spread out to take some places. And so even though we're a small group, it allowed people to work in our spaces. So they had 6 feet apart. I enjoyed working from home because I had done it as a consultant for all those years. I love being able to work in my, what I call my lounging pajama pants and wear no makeup, put in a ponytail and put a load of laundry in the washing machine while I'm working. It was wonderful. So as far as routines, the only thing I really had to work with was to make sure that when camera was on, my husband wasn't going behind me in his boxers. Yeah. I don't know whether we're going to talk about COVID later, because I do have a couple of funny things to talk about. So we'll skip that.
Okay, good morning. My name is Lisa Klepper. I am the Market Director for Revenue Cycle for CHI Memorial. I have responsibilities for our Tennessee facilities and we have Georgia facilities. We have 2 in Chattanooga and then 1 in Fort Oglethorpe. But you know anything about Chattanooga, you know, you throw us down for Chattanooga, you're at Fort Oglethorpe. You're in Georgia. So I get to balance both of those, which is very good. I have been around the block for several years and been in several states, several facilities, working both for primarily hospital systems, but also working on the vendor side, done some consulting. So I'm in a unique situation now in that I work for CHI, which is now better known as Common Spirit. You know, like all systems, we change our name about every 5 or 6 years just to, you know, to keep everybody talking. So Common Spirit's 174 hospitals. We have hospitals in California all the way to Ohio. I'm glad I just had my 3 that I had to deal with. But in doing that, we have our entire revenue cycle outsourced. So I work for the hospital itself, but I liaison with their outsourcing company to make sure that they are doing, what we need to do, and also to focus on what is important in our market. Because when you've got so many hospitals and everything's centralized and everybody, and it's all outsourced, you lose a lot of control. And we all know that while, it's all a grocery store, if I'm looking for my little market, then I've got to have people who understand my little market. And when it's so fragmented, it becomes quite a challenge. Now, as far as how things have changed with COVID, the one thing that I had forgotten and enjoyed forgetting was how to cook. And it was, cook 1 or 2 days a week, do the drive-throughs, do the pickup. Well, then everything shut down. And so all of a sudden I have, dusted off some skills that, I had gladly forgotten, but, enjoyed that. And it's been probably a lot more time outside because, of course we can't stay inside unless you wear a mask. So, enjoyed a lot more time outside, so.
Morning, I'm Mindy St. George, AVP for Managed Care at Wellstar Health System in the greater Atlanta area. And worked there about 2.5 years. It's been great, great place to work, in case anyone's interested. And before that, I was 9 years at Grady. Very, very different experiences between the 2 health systems. And I've also worked on the payer side for a couple of HMOs, some PPOs. So I've got experience all around the house for a couple of years. During the pandemic, it made me realize that, in the zombie apocalypse, being a managed care expert means nothing. So I've been working on gardening, so at least I can pull my weight during the apocalypse. And secondarily, if anyone knows which cat therapist, I'm gonna need one when I go back to the office.
All right, well, with managed care being represented here, I wanted to start off with some relationship questions. We'll go specifically as it relates to payers, because I think we all see changes everywhere. One of the things that I've seen from a life play is changes in the way that payers operate behavior, so I think that changes in the way that we operate behavior. But I imagine for yourselves that there's a distinct impact. A lot of managed care and revenue cycle jobs about those relationships. Can you talk a little bit about how things have changed over the years, thinking back 5, 10 years, the way you used to interact with payers and business?
Well, since I've already admitted I've been in managed care for 10 years. One of the biggest changes we've seen, or I've seen, is that you used to be able to set a goal, your annual goals. I'm making this up, complete the Aetna negotiation, by the end of the year, it's gonna be my goal. Well, you can't do a contract anymore in a year. Wellstar's been working on a couple contracts for over 4 years. And so it changes the dynamic. The relationship is still similar, but it just takes a lot longer. And a lot of the health plans, I think you guys will agree, the decision-making has moved. So it's no longer with the person I'm talking to anymore. It, has to go up, and then it comes down, and up, and, so that's why it takes so long, and then whatever other things they have going on in the market. So it's not there's no more quick fixes, like, back in the day. You could call someone up and say, hey, we have this problem with lithotripsy, and you could fix the lithotripsy problem. You can't do that anymore. They're saying, oh, I see you have a lithotripsy problem. We have a PT problem. And then we're like, okay, well, you have a PT problem, so we have a cardiac cath problem. And before you know it, you're negotiating the whole contract, which isn't always one, in our best interest, or 2, is it in the right rotation. So that's just something where it takes a long time to get the contracts now.
So, the one thing I've noticed, and we kind of talked about this at breakfast when we were chatting, for those of us who have been around the HFMA for a long time, you used to look out and you would see the insurers at the table, at the meeting, you knew them. I mean, I think we were past president, Jim Piper, years ago, he was with Blue Cross. And that was something that was very common. And, you know, now you don't see the payers here. You don't have quite the same relationship that you used to have. I mean, like all organizations, we have JOCs, and one of the things, being in revenue cycle and working so closely with managed care that I do really appreciate with their organization is that we have a standing meeting every 2 weeks. And it's within the organization, and we have an issues list, and this is, if we've got problems, we bring it to them. Now, the idea is that they are not to solve our problems, it's just so that we're all on the same page and they do a little bit better tracking. You know, revenue cycle folks, a lot of times, we've got a huge problem, this is what it is, we get it solved, and we're on to the next problem. But, you know, and then, you know, 9 months from today, we've got a new contract coming in, managed care comes in and says, okay, show me all your problems and what's been resolved. We don't do a good job tracking it. So that's the reason, one of the reasons managed care wants to track all that stuff, what we identified and all things like that. But a very good give and take situation, which doesn't happen in all organizations, but if it's not happening in yours, then I strongly encourage you. I think it's been a really win-win situation.
One of the changes that I've seen over the years is that just as providers have merged, healthcare plans have merged a lot, and they've become very nationalized. And what happens with that is that the language that I used to be able to work out with my buddy Jerry over at Aetna can't be done anymore. And so every time, well, a real life example, we reinstituted a behavioral health program that had gone away long before I even joined the organization. And all of a sudden, oh yeah, Patty, we started a behavioral health program last week. We need to get those services added to the contract. Well, you know, typically there's a separate behavioral health contract, which means you got to start from scratch. You got to get language. Legal has to look at it, and 9 months later you might have a contract. Or can we just add it to the hospital contract? Somebody, what is that? Sure. Not anymore. You know, well, you know, while we're looking at that, let's look at lithotripsy and some of the other things. And like, well, we can't do that. That contract's too old. We can't amend it. So you're stuck with restarting every time there's a change. Your system expands. You're adding locations. It's just, they're very much less flexible than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah.
So it's been pretty recent change.
Yeah. And to add on to what was said, you know, we do JOCs, we go to our provider reps, we give them the issues with the expectation that they're going to actually work on the issues and report back that they've been fixed. That just doesn't happen anymore. The provider rep is a conduit to the person who's really going to fix it, and they have no control over that. You know, provider enrollment is loaded offshore, trying to talk to somebody over there to get this provider who's been working here for 6 months and been on the list every month at the JOC. It just doesn't happen like it ought to.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, since we're digging out dirt, let's start using Lisa's represented that there's great collaboration and relationship between engineering and stuff, which is awesome. But I'm curious, we all have, with dysfunction, we all have communication challenges, organizational challenges. Again, based on where you sit, to look at where it's organization. We have a magic wand, fix it, what ails it to make your life or other people's life better.
But, well, we manage here on Red Side also have a great relationship, communication, not quite as formal. I like yours though, so take it out. And the Red Cycle folks don't do this, but other areas in the organization do. My least favorite statement is, why can't you just?
Yes.
Why can't you just add lithotripsy to the contract? Why can't you just change the readmission rules for Cigna? Why can't you just tell Blue Cross? Well, I can just tell Blue Cross a lot of things. But I do think, as what Lisa was saying, is we need to work on those relationships, to get a better streamline. And I think some of it is education too, because they don't understand either how it works. And so we're trying to teach them to fish instead of just giving them the fish, by showing them where the provider manuals are online, or giving them links to the appeal process. We actually did I don't know, inserts kind of thing, and how to write appeal letters, because our appeal letters were, it was just like a regurgitation of the side note here. Don't regurgitate the entire medical record in an appeal. If the provider says, this is denied because you didn't show lab tests, the first paragraph should be all about the lab tests. Not why the patient came in, how there's no support at home, I mean, that's helpful. But answer the denial question. Don't just regurgitate the medical record. I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, I'll go. One of the things, and I mentioned that I've only been there about 2 years, one of the things that I found as I came in is that folks who are on the front line at rev cycle, at patient access, where they get authorizations, they don't understand the managed care concepts. They don't understand what is a contractual adjustment. And so one of the things that we've instituted is, well, actually, there are two things. The first one is bi-weekly, every third week, we send out this information about, it's called managed care concepts. One of them was, what is a contractual adjustment? And you make it in a way that starts off with the question, why are we writing off so much money? Well, we all know in this world it's not real money, but time. And explaining why we do things that way. People always do better. I always do better when I say why, instead of just saying, it's a write-off, write it off. The second thing that we've done is, in most places, don't correct me if I'm not right, not everyone has access to view the actual contract. But yet everybody in their job used to know what's in there that affects my job. And so we started a document that we call Major Points Grid, or MPG, where we translate the information out of the contract into a document that can be shared. And it's hosted on our Citrix system in a folder where everybody can get to it. And we have found that very helpful. One of the other issues that we identified is that, we know for the most part what there's an HMO, an health exchange, and Medicare Advantage plan. But when they carry the same name, and this is a real life example I shared at breakfast this morning. We're on the border of South Carolina, so we have a lot of South Carolina patients coming over. Molina, Molina offers a South Carolina Medicaid plan and also the South Carolina Health Exchange plan. Well, one of the ladies from Revenue Integrity sent me an email last week and wanted to know, can you just get with Molina and make them have the same policies and pay the same way with the health exchange that they do with Medicaid? I'm like, no. Yeah, they're two different animals. And you have to go through the explanation about why you can't do that. But it's an educational opportunity. And so I feel like that's a major part of our job, is to make sure that people understand not just what we do, but why we do what we do and what these things mean.
Lisa, I'm very curious to hear your perspective, right? Because when you take the flip, broken information access to a lot of changing faces, I imagine, like how do you keep up with this? Because they're real, but I mean, that's great.
Exactly, and I think a lot of it goes back to training, and we keep talking about training, but you have to have a really robust QA process. And, in my mind, and of course, I'm old school, and I'm focused on my market. Yes, I have a national company. I don't really care about the national company. I care about what's going on in my market, because that's what I'm responsible for. And, you know, in that QA process, I'm not interested in your little sample size. Because your sample size, if you're in that sample, yes, you're being addressed, but the other 95% are not in the sample size and they're not being addressed. And so how do we get to the training there? Because I'm a firm believer that you need to get one-on-one with people and show them not that they did 90% or 88% correct. They need to know what that 8% they didn't do correct, and they need specifics, and they need to correct it. And you correct it 2 or 3 times, you remember it next time, and we won't have that problem. So one of the things that we kind of laughed about early on was the fact that, you know, my cohorts here in managed care said they were the last to know if there's a new program coming down the line. I empathize with them because if they're the last to know, I'm next to the last. And, you know, how to actually make it happen because, when they went to a conference or they now had a Zoom meeting and they learned that we can generate all this revenue, okay, well, whatever. So, you know, one of my biggest internal challenge, the way we're set up, is actually making sure my outsource AR, their priorities are where I think they need to be. Because where does their market need to be for those priorities? Because it is so different. You know, I use Palmetto, they use another map. You know, I have Blue Cross of Tennessee and Anthem of Georgia. They have Anthem of Kentucky, and they have, you know, a group in Texas, and, you know, and making sure that I'm the squeaky wheel and I get hurt. So, you know, just that whole prioritization, you know, working with that is really a challenge and what keeps me on my toes.
Exciting, right? So have fun. As we were talking in our prep calls, one of the things that came out that I didn't expect was just this concept of termination. Walking through or navigating termination, which you're unfortunately coming more from places. Very unique have different perspectives. Kind of feelings, experience, those care terminations. I think it'd be really helpful to hear kind of some of what we may not know, right? So we see in the paper is termination, network, and solution planning. But what's going on behind the scenes in the work, depending on the state of what maybe have to be there.
I would like to start. We recently issued a termination for a large commercial payer that we're still in the termination timeframe. We won't be out of network until mid-December. But what we found was, you know, there's a lot of prep work that needs to be done for that. Initially, the prep work was engaging with that payer. They ignored us for 4 months, and of course, then they want to come back and, do we have an extension of that term? I'm like, no. You had 6 months. We gave you 4 before you even got back to me. But in addition to getting our numbers together and preparing what the proposal would be, there's a lot of internal communication that we had to do. We want to make sure that our physicians are aware of, you know, what's going on. We want to make sure Rev Cycle is aware of what's going on. That collection efforts are going to be different if and when we really become out of network. And we want them to know we're working on this. It's not a quick fix. That and our CFO is great about sending blurbs out. You know, we're in the middle of a negotiation. Here's what it's going to mean. You know, how we're going to have to beef up patient collections if we go out of network, because a larger portion could be patient liability. All of those things that have to go into preparing, and not just looking at, you know, a potential contract language, not just looking at the data to decide what rate proposal we ought to make.
So in my situation, let's go back to, I think November of last year, we were addressing a contract extension, a new contract with Blue Cross of Tennessee. We worked with them for about 8 months, and then we sent a termination notice. And understand, we're in Chattanooga. That is the headquarters of Blue Cross of Tennessee. Blue Cross of Tennessee, by far, is the largest, it's the big boy on the block. 65% of their business, and we sent a termination letter, 60 days. So, you know, but we couldn't get their attention, they were not being reasonable, they didn't want to give increases. But, they're a public company, so we knew that, yes, their bottom line had taken a hit, from 450 to 350 million, with profit. Really, guys, we're wanting small percentages here. We're not asking double digits. We're just asking what you've traditionally given us. And, so, we go July the 8th, we send this announcement, a lot of social media, papers, they did great business because everybody was having that full page ads. Fortunately for both of us, nobody got really mudslinging and dirty or anything like that, but it was just, here's our stance. We've gone through, COVID. Look at what it's done for our staff. Look what it's done for expenses. Look at what it's done to everybody. Look at what it's done for our bottom line. What bottom line? And Blue Cross was the same. Oh, we want to work together. They're being, the whole bit. So yes. So you get through August and we're planning. Well, we came out and said, look, if we don't come to an agreement, patients, covered employees, we're going to let you stay in network through the end of the year. And we were going to treat you as in network. Well, then they were looking to revenue cycle and saying, and you get to figure out what the in-network rate was. How do we do that? And so we were doing all this planning. And so, initially we thought 34 weeks, we'll have this done. Now we're counting down from the 30 days to the 15 days and we still don't have an agreement. We're thinking, okay, we're going to have to put this in motion. And, and all the planning of that and the emails and the social media that's going out. Fortunately, the September the 8th was a Wednesday. The Monday was Labor Day. And at 6 o'clock on that Labor Day, we get an email internally saying, we think we've come to an agreement. At least so on Tuesday it was signed. So, 59 days from the termination date, we were able to go through it. And of course, we're still working on a lot of the odds and ends, but, quite a challenging situation, for everybody. The patients obviously were upset. The city, county, government was upset. But we did come to an agreement and, we kissed and made up for another, 3-4 years. And hopefully next time it won't be this difficult.
And then before you go, let me just add, when you're in that mode of having to issue a termination, you have to be prepared to go to the midnight hour. Whether you really want a contract with them or not, they have to believe that you will go out of network. And sometimes it goes down to the line.
Did you get the increase?
We've got a satisfactory contract.
Question, I shouldn't have questions, but, can you explain the structure? Because I hear you talking about managed care and impact on revenue cycle and revenue cycle and working with managed care revenue cycle. Can you explain from your perspective how your managed care reporting structure is in relation to like revenue cycle and CFO and that kind of thing? Well, and all of you, because it sounds like it might be different.
I report directly to the CFO.
Okay.
And in a very large corporation, you have the revenue cycle silo, you have the managed care silo. And at the very top, they all report into the CFO, but at the local level, we are pretty much partners, but there's and there's some dotted lines, but they don't report, managed care doesn't report into revenue cycle doesn't report into that, but we dotted line into like a market CFO, and then obviously all the way up the top, it goes up to the CFO.
And at Wellstar, it's similar. We have a revenue cycle group and a managed care group, and both of those report to the CFO. Talk about termination.
Yeah, it does, because some of the challenges that you're talking about is a little different because I am revenue cycle and managed care and revenue cycle too. So it's all.
Right. It should be based on the same.
It's all, yeah.
So I'm going to start out, I think we all agree that healthcare is wrong.
Yes.
I mean, it's not secret anymore, most stars out of network, United Healthcare. And so what I want to talk about is the post termination. So, we spent time, we were pretty sure we were gonna be out of network. We were hoping for last minute, end of the day deal, but it didn't work out. So we spent a lot of time the month prior doing shelves of letters to physicians and patients, Medicare, we split up Medicare Advantage patients from commercial patients because the rules are a little bit different. Notice periods can be different, not so much on the hospital side, but it is on the payer side. Shell of a website, I learned more about website design than I really need to know, ever.
There's something you could think of.
Yeah, because you have to have a microsite. Yeah, I mean, you have to. And the one thing, and it never repeats itself, I guess, lawyers, but United Healthcare has a fantastic web design group. Now, the data isn't quite right, but it looks fantastic,
So you called it for help, right?
So we have a microsite also, but you need all that in place because we needed on October 3rd, we needed to turn it on. And so you can't be messing around on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th. It has to be turned on the day of termination. And even since then, now we're still spending a lot of time to be prepared for this, with marketing, with with all these other folks on what authorizations do or do not look like, what's the continuity of care, which is a huge thing. Because a lot of patients qualify for continuity of care, and we want them to, because we don't want to leave any of the patients out in the cold. That it's not cool. But just be prepared from a managed care side, marketing side, and it includes the revenue cycle because sometimes we need statistics or numbers or are they paying? What are they paying to complete the picture?
And the patients come in with this piece of paper in their hand saying, can you help me fill this out? Well, 65% of your business coming in with a piece of paper to help fill out, and how many records now, medical records, so it is tremendous.
Yeah, and so just FYI, for United Healthcare, the continuity of care, the patient has to call to get the form. We can't even have the forms. The patient has to call to get the form, then the patient fills out the top half, which is easy, but then the physician has to fill in the second half and sign it, and then it's fax or mail to United Healthcare. So to the communication piece, we let all our practices know, you need to fax this. You need to help the patient fax this, after you sign it. But the other thing is, with a bit of an education to some of the physicians, well, we educate all physicians, but that you have to be as specific as possible on what the service is, because United is taking it literally. So, and this isn't true, but if someone gets 2 chemo drugs, if I only put 1 chemo drug on the form, only 1 chemo drug is approved. The other chemo drug is not. So it's just some of the idiosyncrasies of, you're gonna spend a lot of time looking through the nitty-gritty details, even after termination.
Patients, revenue cycle, knowledge, information.
Yeah.
Now, to address that, we can do a prior.
Yeah, no surprise, United is out of network, or Brady is out of network, United. I worked there when that happened. And the day after the termination happened, the rep called me and said, you're out of network, right? I said, I know. And she said, okay, never talk to United again for a year and a half. There was no media, there was no questions, there was nothing.
Just diligence, depends where you are.
Yeah.
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 Well, I found that to be very interesting, just to get, you tend to think terminations is a better option, but
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to kind of wade a little bit deeper into kind of the nitty-gritty of what y'all do. So, we can just talk about changes and challenges, right? So is there anything specifically, a practice or policy, the payers, government payers, that you guys kind of deal with a lot of your time? I'm sure it's like, well, like, so for the sake of this group, that's just very long. Well, yeah, what comes to mind is that nominating the time and challenging policy area.
One of the biggest changes has been site of service policy, whereby radiology now has to be medically necessary to have a person have radiology in the hospital versus going to freestanding. You know, United was one of our issues because our freestanding was still new and we didn't have, still don't, have the United Healthcare policy, contract. So they wanted us to send a patient over to an out-of-network facility, which is contrary to what they normally want. There are a lot of others. One that we did a lot of data mining on is the specialty pharmacy networks that the payers are creating, whereby it's not a policy on our side, it's a benefit change. So they're creating these separate networks, and then the benefits say, you know, you've got to go over here to get your drugs. Well, we all know that affects our net revenue. We don't mark up drugs much in comparison, but now, you know, we have to have drugs brought to us or mailed to us to deliver it to the patient. To me, that's a risk management issue because, first of all, you don't want a patient walking in the drug. Second of all, you know, how long has it been in the mail? We all know U.S. mail has a problem right now. Has it been a week in the mail? Is it going to arrive in time for the patient's infusion?
Where do you store it?
Yeah, and we have to have people who open the box, pick it out, store it correctly, mark it for the right patient. We don't get reimbursed for that. And so, you know, that's a big problem. There are many others. I don't want to dominate.
But you could.
Yeah, one of the things that we're seeing a lot of, and, you know, we don't exactly know where it fits, is this prevalence of this direct employer contracting. You know, they're coming to us and they're saying, okay, the hazmat volunteers for Hamilton County need a stress test once a year. And they want to, you know, contract with us. We have a large heart institute. That's where they want to send them to. It's 30 a year. And yet, you know, it's all this hoop jumping. And yes, and we're going to pay you this wonderful amount, $12. And we want an invoice. We don't want a bill, we want an invoice, and this is what it has to have on it. And by the way, include the reading in that too, and we're gonna send one check. So you've got that. We have the Bledsoe State Prison that wants us to come and do mammographies. You know, so we drive the bus up there for, you know, mammographies. And if they need an ultrasound, the ultrasound has to be done by the ultrasound tech in the prison. But we have to read it, and they want it billed to try it once a month. So it's all of these little things that, you know, we have Uno, which is a huge workers' comp company, that they found out that 70% of their employees don't have a PCP. So they're rolling out this program that, you know, to encourage more PCP and more screenings, and they want it a separate way. So it's all these things, you know, if it's in the realm of the traditional managed care, Blue Cross thing, you know, we can handle that. We know how to do that. But all these little niche things that are becoming more and more prevalent with the employers that you want to please and that you want to stay in good graces with. And again, we go back to the front end, they have to register it correctly, and then the back end has to know how to handle it. And everything's got different rules now. So your standardization and your efficiency goes out the window for what kind of revenue is generating? Oh, but downstream. So we keep telling ourselves downstream.
Well, and I don't want to keep interrupting, but I will. One of the fun things that I did, something I didn't know anything about, is in Augusta, there was a wrestling match that was going to happen from the Professional Wrestling Association. They sent us a single case agreement in case one of the wrestlers had to go to the ER. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? And they wanted a specific rate, which we quoted something else, but you know.
Well, to the point, that kind of group of so that your partners know about the hazmat.
Yeah.
So back to kind of what Patty was saying about the site of care that, and I assure you, cycle friends, that we dispute almost everything now. Whether we think we're gonna be successful or not, whether our contract allows us to dispute policies or not, and to the specialty pharmacy networks, our contracts don't allow disputing of that because it's a network benefit change, not a policy change. So now we have to watch what words are used in the policy / procedure / network / benefit, all those changes. And we crafted so it does fit in our contract, but some of it, some of it is denied. But we started disputing almost everything, whether we think we're gonna be successful or not, so that we have, so like Lisa was saying, we have a list of things when the negotiation opens again that we can address in the contract when it opens.
So we're technically at time, we started a little bit late. There are more questions I could ask, but also want to take the moment for the crowd to attend it. So, start back there. No, you're good.
I think we were talking about it a little bit at the happy hour last night. You may have walked away, Nikki, but would there ever be a world where our major hospital systems per state could get together, use collective bargaining power, and really impact these contracts in a big way, so that the payers are the ones that have to scramble and figure something out?
Well, one, that's legal, currently. Yeah.
One thing if it's legal sometimes too, so it's like.
Yeah, we're not allowed to discuss rates amongst our friends.
Actually, on that note, I'm curious because that's obviously a challenge, right? What is the, like, what can you do?
So we can do what we do, because Georgia has a very active hospital association.
Yes.
And so things that is not rate related, that affect all of us, like, our example is, you have to authorize us.
Side of service is a big example.
It actually, site of service is a good example. So the hospital, Georgia Hospital Association helps us in talking to different payers. They have not been overly successful in stopping it, but we have been successful in postponing some of them. And some of them, my suspicion is they'll never be resurrected, but the plan postpones it so that they can save face. Yeah.
Or increase.
Yeah.
We can talk about those specific impacts.
Right, yeah. So we do that, and like I said, and our Georgia Hospital Association has a vice president of managed care. And so she is the liaison, and she does a fantastic job.
I was just going to ask, since surprise billing is coming about January 1st from a federal perspective, filling out a network with peers is going to be much trickier because it's going to rely on the QPA rate, which is going to be way lower than the perspective. So why don't we just forget the peers and just directly contract with the employers who are the top ones?
And we may or may not be looking at that.
No comment, that's a good comment.
I know years and years ago, many of the market, you probably had a lot of direct contracts.
We actually do have 2 handfuls of direct contracts now from our earlier time that we still manage and still handle, and we are looking at a couple others, just because, well, the other thing is we have a very successful clinically integrated network too. And so what we can offer the employer is the population health aspect and the patient or employee care, getting them PCPs. We can offer all that to an employer. We cannot offer that through United Healthcare. I mean, we can, but it's much more effective when you do it through the employer.
So to what extent are you considering electronic transaction sets and the workflows associated with them as you're doing managed care contracting, listening to the kind of exception workflows and things that come into those specialty contracts, and how are you kind of thinking about those things for your future contracts?
I mean, in my perspective, that would be the way to go. The problem is who you're contracting with can't handle it. You know, they contracted with the local government, you know, so they don't have the ability on their end to handle it. I can consent to it. I have trouble, you know, sending electronic data to my partner physicians that are on different systems. But unfortunately, with these direct contracting, very few of them have the ability to accept it because they're just not far enough along like the Aetnas and the Blue Crosses, and that is the one downside of it.
Do you require it on the bigger contracts, like thinking about the 278 pre-certification requirements?
Oh, on the big contracts, yes, but on these little contracts that you're doing direct employer, we're not able to. We could probably require it, but that would probably just, you know, turn them around and go down the street to a competitor, and we're not willing to do it because this is the new world, and this is where we see the world going. Is this more and more with the influence.
So you're putting language in your contracts about those transaction sets or no? Because
Not
sometimes
these
there's still a
smaller
requirement
ones,
for.
not these smaller ones, but I mean, it's already in the language of the bigger contracts in many cases, and, you know, some of it, they do very well, and some of it, the language is there, we send it that way, but we spend an awful lot of time tracking it down on the back end because it doesn't seem to work within their system, you know, healthcare.
Any more questions for the group? Okay, well, I think we'll call that a